What was the genesis of the idea for this home here?
It goes back to 2009 when we first came to this part of the island, and we found this little heaven that's unspoiled land in Taitung. So we decided to, I started thinking about my retirement, what I'm going to do after I retire. Actually, sped up my plan for retirement. So we started looking for land, and luckily we found this piece of property that is really the ideal piece of land, I think, for a retirement home. It's got the mountain behind us and overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And originally this land was like a farmland. It's for the rice crop. So I started thinking about what to do with it, because my concept was to have the house is not really the key element in this environment, but the natural environment is the key. The house is just it plays a second part in this. So I'm trying to keep the house a very low profile and trying to make the house somehow fit into the environment. That was the main idea, and to provide a comfortable, easy maintenance house that we can live here for our retirement life. That's what the whole idea.
Now, you're not originally from Taitung.
No, not at all.
Where are you from originally?
Well, I spend most of my time in Taipei, but of course I travel, but not very often to Taitung.
And in Taipei, what did you study in Taipei?
In Taipei, that's where I work. Actually, I went to the States for architectural degree, and then I came back in 1992. So I've been in Taipei most of the time. And I was seriously ill. I had a very serious heart surgery in end of 2008. So that surgery opened up my eyes, opened up my mind. I started thinking, this is not how I want to spend the rest of my life. Work is not the only thing; it's important. So, and as an architect, it's always been my dream to design and build something for myself. I've been designing for others, but first time for my own use, for my own pleasure.
Now, what is unique about this particular home is that you were not the lead designer on this project. Talk a little bit about that.
I was very fortunate that I have a daughter who is also an architect, and she was educated in the States, and then she's working in Shanghai. And I think I didn't really plan for this, but actually the entire design process, the whole process, the part that I enjoy the most is working with my daughter on this house. And of course, she has some brilliant idea that brought into the design. And we spent probably a good 2 years' time working on the design. So every time we meet, every time we travel together, the only topic is the design of this house. So we will keep a notepad, and I would draw something, a little simple sketch, and show it to her. Is this what you mean by that? She said, no, I want to do this. I said, oh, I see what you mean. So we spend the good part of our time together talking about the design. So we have a very complete understanding of her ideas and my idea, and of course Wendy's idea too. So it's a combination of all these ideas and our expectation that put together this design. Yeah.
Did you ask your daughter to participate in the project, or did she request to be part of the project?
That's a good question. I think she proactively wanted to involve. Maybe she didn't trust this old man who can. But she, or maybe she wants to be a part of this and really enjoy the experience, also the working with me. Of course, there are lots of arguments in the process, and then I remember the the phrase she whenever we got stuck by something, and she would say, "Daddy, you really want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? Let's sit on it, and we'll talk about it later." And ends up she wins every argument. So it's a good experience. Yeah, I think.
Now, when you and your daughter were initially discussing the project, what type of concepts and ideas were being kind of tossed around in terms of how you wanted to design and build this structure?
Yeah, as I said, we spent 2 years working on this design, and actually the first year was entirely focused on where to place the building and what kind of how do we, because the site planning I think is the most important for this project. So we try, I don't remember how many options we have explored, but this idea actually came when she one day just gave me a call, said, "So let us do something really simple, so simple that it sounds stupid. Have just a simple bar, but cut the bar and move the guest house away from the main house, so it becomes two separate structures, and put the main entrance stair in between. So this way that we don't have to go around the house to get to the front." And this changed everything, because our guests can park on the upper tier, come down the stair and get to the main house level, and then the two houses connected by the wood deck. That turns out to be a much better idea than having just one long bar. And yeah, that was just that's all we wanted, just a simple box, and very modest, because we feel that architecture in a beautiful environment like this should not overtake the beauty of the nature, and it should be just play a very low key elements. So we're trying to have all the natural material of the house: wood, stone, metal, and nothing shiny, all very rustic look, so to blend into the environment. Yeah. So that's it. That's the very simple concept.
I have to admit, the first time I saw a picture of the house, my first reaction was, wow, that's just a box on the land. But now that I've actually come up close and seen it, it makes perfect sense. And also the way that you design, like the choice of materials on the outside. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and how critical that is to the overall look of the structure.
And because we are right in the middle of the natural environment, I think to have the house to accommodate the weather is very important, because we are living here in year round, so you have all different kinds of weather. Most of the time you have very hot sun during the day, so and I'm trying to use as little as energy consumption as possible. So you have to have very good heat insulations. So though it's a simple box, because of the exterior stone actually helps to store the heat and block it from entering the house. And also a lot of concrete structure, the problem you have is on the roof, because you have sun directly on the roof, and then it brings the heat into the house in the evening, so it gets very warm in the evening. So what I did is I had a wooden deck on the roof, and then with a gap in between, so it really helps to block the heat from entering the house. And also, I think the other important element is to have natural ventilation at all times, even when the rain or when the sun is hot. So I try to design the window opening in such a way that even when it rains, you can still keep window open. And on the east side, where we have the very strong morning sun, I recess the opening, and so you have a very deep overhang, and that blocks the morning sun from heating up the house in the early part of the morning. So that way, the ventilation will just keeps the house cool, even when in the summertime. Yeah, so trying to keep the house in the natural environments that it's very comfortable for people to live in. That's the main issue.
Whose idea was it to use the slabs of stone on the outside of the house?
Well, we actually, along the coast, there was one resort. Actually, it was a resort that they use some of the similar slate on the exterior. So we kind of like that effect, rustic look. So we start looking into where to source the material, and talking to the contractor who built that house, and how to lay, what's the skill required to lay this kind of stone. So when I started to do my house, we have to actually take our workers to talk to this contractor and ask him to teach our workers, what's the skill required to do the house, what's the trick, what's the techniques. So we are doing everything from scratch. Yeah.
For those who are not looking at a picture of the house, could you just describe for the viewer the site setting of your house?
Okay, the land was originally shaped in 3 tiers, and each tiers the height difference around 6 to 7 feet, and then so we placed the house, because this is part of the experience of when the journey of entering the house. So we want our visitor not seeing the entire picture of the house when they enter the property. So it's kind of like a gradual step that you see a little bit this, a little bit of that, and then later on you see the whole thing. So we put the house in the middle tier, but we lower the house by 3 feet or so. So by doing that, when you're entering from the rear, your view to the ocean is not obstructed, it's not blocked. And also by doing that, we dug out a lot of dirt, so all this we can build up the height behind the property and in front of the property. So it becomes like a 2 tiers land, and the house is in the middle. It's like a rock that's cut into the hill, a piece of rock. So that also enhanced the idea of having the house, well fitted in the shape of the land. And yeah.
Could you describe the natural environment?
Okay, we have the mountain behind us, which is the coastal mountain. Is roughly, I think, about 1 kilometers away from the house, behind the house. It's 900 meters high, and our property is the elevation is around 170 meters, and then in the front is very wide open. We're looking at the Pacific Ocean, and because this property used to be a rice field, so there's no trees on this property. All the trees are planted after we finish with the house, and yeah, it's one pretty square lot, and then very wide open view, and we like the openness. We like, again, this is a simplicity, yeah, of the shape of the land that really attracted us.
Now, I would imagine, I mean, I don't know if this is the case, I would imagine that sometimes people who are coming from the big cities and move into Taitung, they come here, they build a home, and it's strictly for the purpose of having a vacation home. They have no intention of being involved with the people here. Since you're moving from Taipei, the big city, how has moving to Taitung, has it changed you in the way you see things?
It helped us to understand how little we are in the natural environments, and how little we can do to change the environment. Because in the big city, you live in a structure that is temperature controlled. So everything, no matter what kind of temperature condition outside, inside can always have the same kind of condition, air condition. So, but out here, you pretty much have to deal with the natural environment, the change of season, all the time. So we learn to be more respectful to the natural environment, and there are things that you cannot overcome. You just have to accommodate the environment. Coming down here, actually, we learned quite a bit from local farmers. We made a lot of friends with the farmers. There are pineapple farmers, rice farmer, custard apple farmers, and one thing we learned from these farmers are that their life really dependent on the weather, the natures. So, and the way they respect natures, the way their attitudes, I think, accepting the natures and make the best out of it. I think that's the attitude we have learned quite a bit from the farmers. Yeah.
Now, you and your wife have some involvement in the community. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Once when I retired, my only focus is to build this house. So that entire year, I feel I'm more busier than work, actually. But after we moved in, I start to think that this is when retirement actually begins. So what I'm going to do next, and just happily we were told by friends that there is a 慈善，那个叫什么？charity foundations. Yeah. There's a very famous guy. His name is Yan Changshou. He did a lot of charity work for Taitung City on the local business, training them how to serve in the restaurant and how to do bed and breakfast, hotels, and now that his focus is on education, because in this far away land. The people here is they're very lacking of good resource on educations. So he has established elementary and high schools here, and also he's helping bringing in peoples and money to help them to really enhance their educational program. So they come to me and said, maybe you can do something for there's a local private Catholic vocational school who is pretty famous. It's established about 60 years ago, and they are pretty famous in teaching the students on skilled labors like carpentry work, machinery works, or even on architectural interior design. So they're asking if I can teach a class as a volunteer teachers here on the subject of architectures. So I was skeptical in the beginning because I've never teach in my whole life. This is the first time for me to standing at the platform and facing a whole bunch of 16, 17, 18 years old kids. I haven't even talked to this age of kids for 50 years maybe. So it was a big challenge for me. But turns out to be a learning experience for me as well, because it gives me a chance to really put together all the material for teaching. And at first I was trying to mainly just to open their eyes on architecture around the world, or architecture of the famous architect. But I started to shift my focus a little bit this year, because it's very difficult for these kids to become architect, considering the backgrounds and all the education required to be an architect. But they are quite creative in a way, in a sense. So I'm trying to steer away from too much architectural training and into more fun, playful, and creative work. And hopefully I can help these kids to understand not every building has to be designed by trained architect. It can be done by everybody, and whoever is, particularly in Taitung, the general public consider a good architecture is like a Spanish style or a Mediterranean style. There never is a Taitung style. So I'm trying to tell these kids that you were born and raised in Taitung, and you are a group of people that are going to be the most familiar with the kind of the weather condition, the weather type here, and the land conditions. So you are the most eligible to develop what's best for Taitung architectural style. So I'm trying to teach them that, as they are the one that will be more suitable to design a house in Taitung than the architects from Taipei or whatever. So that was the whole idea, and I felt that. But education is a complicated thing. It is so complicated that, particularly for someone who doesn't have the educational profession background. So I'm just trying to share my view with the kids here. That's basically it.
So the house has given you a lot. The nature here has given you a lot. And
Yes.
so you feel you should give back also.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this house meant to be shared by friends and the people we know here, and the kids. I'm trying to open their eyes. I think every it's just they cannot imagine the house can be built this way. They come here and then to say, "Wow, this," I told them that the best way to appreciate architecture is really to walk into the architecture, not looking at from magazine or slides. You have to really be there, and you feel the environment. So I think that's probably the most effective day of the entire semester for the kids. Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk about in regards to this house or anything else?
Well, I think the process of building this house is really painful. So our friends come to visit us and was inspired by this house and said, "Oh, can we also get a piece of land and we can do the same thing?" But my advice to them is that you don't just it's not as easy as you think it is. It takes a lot of commitment, and once you have the house built, you really have to live here to experience a different lifestyle. I think we are fortunate that we are able to. We're determined, but maybe because I'm an architect and this is a dream come true. So, but I feel the dream becomes bigger, and if I not only have completed this house, but also I think we are really enjoying a different lifestyle, and that really give us a very colorful, I think very fruitful retirement life. I think that's something that is not expected in the very beginning.
How long were you a practicing architect?
Since college, so I would say 40 years. Right.
Okay, so you've worked on all kinds of projects with lots of different people.
Yes, right. Before I retired, I was working for a international interior design firm. We were focused on international cooperation on their office design and constructions, and I'm happy to put that behind me, because working with a corporate is sometimes unbearable. But back to this, working on this house is good to working with people again, not with corporate. So I think that really is a big relief, and I'm very fortunate. Yeah.
And that actually segues to my next question is, what is the difference between working on your architectural projects as a professional and working on a project with your daughter?
I think working with our family, not just my daughter, my wife, is very challenging, because everyone is a client, everyone is a designer, everyone has a point of view on something. So trying to get the consensus agreement is almost impossible. But I think it all turns out to be good, because I remember my wife said, "Oh, this looks like this." I told her that it has been in my mind for 6 months already. I know it's going to be like this, but I'm just going to materialize it so you can see it. So it's very funny that we understand each other more during the process, and now we're appreciating it. This becomes a retreat of our family and friends.